one night only, live in the library at Ringling College, a debate between two of today's preeminent art critics. A reprise of their legendary debates for ArtNet, Strictly Critical. Give a round of applause, everybody. It's a heavyweight rematch, 10 mates in making. In the red corner, art critic for the New York Times, author of Warhol and the Mavericks Museum, Albert Barnes and His American Dream, from Harper College, a graduate of McGill University. He holds a PhD from Oxford University. The incomparable Blake Gopner. In the blue corner, art critic for the Village Voice, curator at large for USF GAM, co-founder of the Brooklyn Rail, Lost My Place 2010's Arts Writers Grant recipient, author of Social Forums, A Short History of Political Art from Zwerner Books, and soon-to-be guest curator of the Bronx Museum, the inimitable Christian Valvero-Spone! The two will argue opposing viewpoints on some of today's most polarizing art and artists. It'll be a clash of criticism, a duel of discourse, a polemical pandemonium, a rumble of the written word, an extravaganza of ekphrasis, an onslaught of ontology, that was my favorite, a chance to once and for all determine who's right and who isn't wrong. Let's get ready to critique!
Fair fight, a fair fight.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
You ready? I think you're first. You're up first. I don't think you're going to survive beyond this, but you can start. You can start. Yeah,
Go on with your bad self.
Yeah.
All right, do it.
Oh, there we got it. We got it.
Okay, and I got to crane my neck this way. Caravaggio, Boy Bitten by a Lizard, of which there are two, right? One is at the National Gallery in London. And well, among other things, it's really sort of like it's a youthful painting, but it's also a painting about the temptations of youth, the temptations of the flesh, if you will. This is this young boy who actually looks a lot like Caravaggio. It's a bit of a self-portrait. One of the interesting things to me about this painting is that lizard bite on that particular finger, right, which is what? Which finger? It's the middle finger, correct? Really, among other things, sort of like it suggests maybe a vagina dentata, among other things, right? There is this idea of the digitus imputicus. You know that term?
Absolutely, yeah.
This is
totally.
the digitus imputicus, which, by the way, goes about as far back as human gesture, or at least the history of human gesture. Caravaggio is basically painting somebody who's, well, a nobody, right? I mean, this guy's not a noble, right? There's no sign of him being anyone particularly important. But he's, of course, important enough for the painter to decide to push this particular image, which is, I think, kind of remarkable. You know, maybe I've said my piece on this.
I think you've said your
Go
piece.
on.
I think you've said your piece.
But in any event, the reason we put this up, aside from the fact that I think you're all lucky enough to have this painting available right down the way, right, is because I think in terms of what painting does, this is still about as radical as it gets. Right?
Well, wait, is that praise or not? I'm confused.
This is a guy who doesn't like painting, believe it or not.
There's some painting I like, like
I just spent the day with you and you reminded me.
Titian's an okay painter.
You like conceptual.
Cézanne is okay too. They're okay.
Titian was okay.
Yeah, he's fine.
Good.
Yeah, he's
That's
okay.
Nice of you.
Yeah, but Caravaggio. We're talking about Caravaggio here. So I spent several hours with this in the flesh and really, really enjoyed it. I thought I think almost everyone would enjoy it. And that's exactly why I think there's a problem with Caravaggio, because there's this kind of immediacy to it. It reminds me, one of my tests of whether I think art is good is whether a 15-year-old boy would say, yeah, man, like this is so fucking cool. And I think he doesn't pass that test. Like, I think there are too many 15-year-old boys who think this is just completely great. You know, I think it is totally enjoyable, kind of like Rafik Anadol at MoMA, you know. I think it has that same quality of being immediately graspable, of aiming for a kind of pictorial transparency. And that's just what makes me nervous, is anytime there's that sense of just take me, look at me, and I'm right here for you. It reminds me of, you know, any time that someone's trying to put something over on you, which makes me nervous. There's a bunch of other things that make me nervous about this too. There's a kind of cinematic quality to it, which people often praise it for. But then I think, okay, it's interesting. Caravaggio's totally forgotten for like 200 years.
He is. And Roberta Longhi.
And Roberta Longhi rediscovers him. And guess when he's rediscovered? At exactly the moment that cinema arrives on the scene.
This is true. This is 1950s.
Well, I mean, he's discovered under silent movie, and this is kind of interesting, but he's rediscovered at exactly the moment that color movies are taking over. 1951 is Roberto Longhi's great famous Caravaggio and the Caravaggisti show. So I'm just a little suspicious of our love for him on our own terms.
I'm going to dust off Dan Aykroyd from SNL. Blake, you ignorant slut.
How dare you call me ignorant?
I can't underscore how wrong you are, particularly about this painting, but about Caravaggio in general.
Yeah, he's a good technician. I'll grant you that. You know,
I don't want to go over with Caravaggio. We're now approaching minute 26.
Oh my God, we got to move on then. Exactly. So I'm going to introduce my image a little bit. One of the things I've discovered in my many years now of, well, it used to be a friendship with Christian, is that he has terrible taste and doesn't know a great artist when he sees one, and specifically certain Mr. Andrew Warhola that he has doubts about, totally unfounded, ridiculous, absurd doubts about. So tonight I've got to change his mind. So I thought what I should do is introduce a picture, a great work, a masterpiece by Andy Warhol that is unquestionably a masterpiece, that even someone as ignorant as my friend Christian Viveres-Fonet has no choice but to acknowledge as simply a great work of art that cannot be questioned in the way that, yeah, here it is. This is truly one of the great masterpieces of Western culture. I think that's absolutely evident to everyone. And I actually mean that completely seriously, okay? I think this thing does a lot of really important work that's fundamental to the work that Warhol always did.
You're having me on.
I am not having you on. I'm totally serious.
I think even you are sort of like pushing your Warhol sort of mania way far this time.
Are you denying this is a masterpiece, sir? Are you denying that this is a timeless expression of universal human values?
This is yes, I am. I think
oh my God,
close to our masterpiece is a dog dropping outside on the pavement.
That sounds good.
No, listen, I have great doubts about Warhol, particularly sort of after 68. He bored the fuck out of me. Everything to do with sort of celebrity, everything to do with that dictum of his, the best kind of art is business art. The minute that actually begins to sort of function in the world as something other than a stupid quip, the work changes.
I think
this is a thing about artwork in general, is that it is also contextually bound.
Have you ever noticed about American culture, you may not have noticed this, that money and celebrity are kind of vaguely of interest and maybe ostending towards them, my favorite word, an ostensional gesture towards them is like one of the best things art can do. Not fancy style, not trying to make arty images, but just saying, here's celebrity.
This is the
here's
best
money
for Caravaggio I've ever heard.
He is an ostender. He is kind of an ostender. That's the one thing I like about him. Yeah.
Yes.
So I won, right, everyone?
Right.
Yes, I love this so much.
I got to tell you something. She read your biography. She really liked it. So you go on.
I know it's horrible. It's a problem for me.
Listen, so this is called Night Classes at the Department of Painting, Drawing, and Sculpture. 2018, 2020. At some point, Lisa, so I think most of you know her work. She's been essentially sort of pushing, well, she's been pushing figurative painting, and actually along with maybe a couple of other folks, and I'll include John Karin, help sort of revive figurative painting, or at least American figurative
or
painting.
possibly killed it, but that's another story.
Let's go with revive, shall we? You know, it's sort of in the late 80s, early 90s. And, you know, as a matter of fact, well, before I get to that, and fleshed it out, not just sort of in terms of her own work, but also sort of in general terms. I think one of the reasons why, I'll say this also, for good and ill, you know, because he has a lot of imitators like Caravaggio and certainly Warhol, that, you know, she's expanded the field for painting again. I mean, before this, there was nothing but abstraction and a lot of decorative stuff, right? And then suddenly the figure sort of came into play. And it came into play in very complex ways, particularly as she got to be a better painter.
Okay. Well, I don't think it's true that there needed to be a revival of painting. I think there was tons of good painting right through the 20th century of this genre, and it existed among illustrators. There was always people who could paint this well. I say this to my students when they come in and they say, you know, that they're interested in fine painting. I say, look at the jam jar in, you know, on your breakfast table. There's tons and tons of amazingly good illustrational painters. And it's not just that that's meant as a diss on her. I think it's fundamental to what she's doing. I feel as though I am being, how can I put this? That those bodies are for sale in an illustrational mode. Now, I should say that despite being an art critic and having been trained at Oxford University, I'm a relatively hot-blooded male, so I have no particular objection to looking at women's breasts. But my partner, who's an artist, and a woman, really finds her work objectionable. She finds that she feels once again that it's a particular kind of objectification of women, that once again, women are supposed to have big breasts, are supposed to be at the mercy of men. Men are supposed to be able to smoke their pipes into their bellies. And I don't think that I can discount her discomfort. Should we move on?
We should move on.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Here we go. This is my baby. This is my baby.
Yeah. Okay.
I was kind of hoping that you'd.
Opposition to Lisa Scavage or what?
I don't know if it's in opposition to her. It's better. I was hoping you'd rip it apart first, so then I could counter each and every one of your arguments. But I'll try advancing my arguments first. The thing that I really like, I saw this Amy Sherald show, and I was doubtful about it before I got to it for some of the reasons that I think Christian may have objections to the work, because it seemed kind of, you know, just more conservative, simple-minded portraiture in a very traditional mode, not particularly great. But what I like about these is their absolute straightforwardness, their ostension towards a kind of very straightforward presence for these figures, an unmarked presence for these figures. And that for me is extremely important, because if you know the writings of W.E.B. Du Bois or James Baldwin, one of the things, and a Black friend of mine pointed this out to me years ago, one of the things about being Black in America is that you are always Black at every moment, that you are a marked figure. And one of the problems, I think, with some art about Blackness, often by Black people, is that it insists on the figures being marked, that it insists on saying something in a very kind of traditional way, having a portrait that carries certain characteristics. And what interests me about these is that they don't. At their best, they allow these Black sitters simply to be present.
I do see the importance of some of this work, but I think I do because of its content, you know, which I'd rather not in that sort of uncomplicated way. I'm very much a content guy, as you know, any of you who've read my stuff know. I'm about political art. I love political art, and I'm a great advocate for it.
And I think
But
this
I'm-
is deeply political,
but-
deeply, deeply political.
It is. It is. Unfortunately,
This work, these particular works.
Often, some of it is.
I mean,
And some of it is
these
just
very
really bad
five.
decorative work with black subjects. I just think they're literally and figuratively and content-wise ultimately very, very flat. And I'll say that I think she was rushed into being the kind of figure that she is now. Often they're just charming.
I'm talking about literally these 5 pictures.
Fine.
Yeah.
Fucking
Look at 'em.
charming.
Okay. Shall we?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Okay. This is one that Christian and I, we decided we should have something that we just cannot
think we
disagree
will.
about.
Exactly. I think we'll agree on this. How many folks here have not seen that piece before? Raise your hands. I'm so glad we actually left the entire thing on. I'm so glad. Listen to me. That was made in 2016. I saw it with my family, my 15-year-old kid in LA at LA MoCA, at MoCA Geffen actually in 2017, a year after it came out. And man, like, yeah, I haven't seen it much since then. In fact, I decided not to watch it again before today. What a fucking piece of work. And
Yeah.
and you know, at the risk of picking yet another fight with you, I would say it's very painting-like. And bear with me. It's so simple. Listen to me. It's so simple. It's so simple. It's made with such simple elements.
Yeah.
You know, essentially what Jaffa has done is take modes of representation, take images, take moving images, and represent them, reclaim them. And many of them are contradictory, and put them together in this just gorgeous, felt, affecting concatenation of moving stuff. And Jesus, if it isn't a punch in the gut.
I love it. It is, although I will point out that the appropriating images of incredible power from mass culture is kind of a Warhol thing to do. I'm not saying he's derivative of Warhol, but there's a tiny bit of that in Warhol, right? At his best. You know, looking at this, I think you're totally right. What really matters to me a lot about it is that what you were talking about, the appropriational quality, that he's taking things, and I've made an argument that in fact, appropriation, and I've made an argument, actually, kind of theoretical argument, that all of Western so-called fine art is based in appropriation, that's the fundamental act from the birth around 1500 of what we think of as fine art. And this, in a sense, is a great, great capstone to that tradition.
I mean, the title tells you everything, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Love is the message, and the message is death.
Right. The fact that both those things are simply in play. But I mean, it's not just generic. It's not, if there's a concept I hate, it's the notion that art, what is it, one of those cliches, can touch on the eternal verities of the universal human condition. The eternal verities of the human condition. It's like one of my least favorite phrases that occurs on every wall text in every museum.
I mean, this stuff is familiar enough. I mean, again, I do think this is very much like painting. I mean, painting is what? Colored dirt and a fucking piece of cloth. That's it,
But it's,
and this stuff essentially makes images that are out in the world that we're beyond used to seeing, either on, that stupid racist series Cops, or otherwise on the rectangle of hell. And it's put together in a way where we almost don't see the medium. It's transparent.
And it points to that. I think it points to the problem of that transparency. That's what interests me, is that it puts it on display. Caravaggio was painting at a moment where the world came at you in painting. Painting was the way in which the world was represented. Today, painting doesn't have that role at all. If all the paintings in the world disappeared today, it wouldn't affect most people's lives. Whereas video, photography, those are the mediums that bring us the world today. And that's why painting is dead and video lives. Thank you very much, everyone.
Oh, really? That's going to be the end?
Yeah, it is.